Success is a care and treatment program based in a community school. The Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario and M.F. McHugh Education Centre offer outreach services in a program designed to respond to the mental health and educational needs of children between the ages of 4 to 13 with complex emotional and behavioral problems. This involves the use of a positive approach to changing behaviors in partnership with the family and child. The program operates within this collaborative problem-solving approach, initially presented by Ross W. Greene in his book entitled The Explosive Child. The basic philosophy of this approach is that children do well if they can, and according to this approach, the child and youth with challenging behaviors is delayed in the development of crucial cognitive skills. These often include flexibility, adaptability, frustration, tolerance, and problem solving, or they may have significant difficulty applying these skills when they are most needed. This philosophy was further developed in Ross W. Greene and J. Stuart Ablon's Treating the Explosive Child. The goals of this approach are to identify lagging skills as well as the problems or triggers precipitating the challenging behaviors presented by the child. Then, in a collaborative manner with the child, teaching them to build on their strengths and develop strategies that will best respond to their needs. Steps to Success uses a milieu-based approach, where the child attends a program that occurs primarily within a classroom. The classroom staff, or core team, consists of a combination of teachers, child and youth counselors, and educational assistants. The core team has access to a range of other professionals to assist in responding to the needs of the child. They include consulting services from psychiatrists when necessary and appropriate, social workers who respond to the support and education of families in need, speech and language pathologists who respond to communication issues a child may be facing, occupational therapists who can assist in understanding and providing treatment that respond to the sensory and motor issues with a child, and psychology services that assist in understanding the needs and strengths of each child. Both the parent and child participate in the intake process that also involves members of the Steps to Success team. Organized with the receiving school and the school board as part of the Day Treatment McHugh discharge planning process. After discharge, a clinical or educational staff member can provide outreach services at the child's community school. Services may include consultation with the receiving school staff regarding behavioral needs and educational strategies, as well as a set of new community resource supports where available and needed.
This particular video presentation is designed to provide an overview of the CANS so that you can understand where it fits in the overall service system. The Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths Assessment is an outcomes management tool. And what that means is that it's a strategy within a larger framework of how do you create systems that are actually about the work. So what does that tell us about how we think about managing the child serving system? Well, it means that in its essence, it's about dispute management. It's about conflict resolution. So what do we know about conflict resolution that might help us think about how to design systems for children and families? Well, we know a lot, right? I mean, there's libraries on dispute management. There's entire professions. The profession of law exists to resolve disputes. You have laws because that creates an even playing field and gives a structure to resolve differences of perspective, right? So having a shared vision is fundamental. So you have to have a strategy that always allows you to return to the shared vision. But if you distill it down to its simplest concepts, there's two fundamental principles that you have to adhere to if you want to have any hope of resolving disputes. So number one, you have to have a shared vision. So that's what the CANS is. The CANS is a communication strategy that allows you to, a possibility at least, of always returning to the shared vision so that you have the hope that a system can always learn to make its decisions based on the best interests of children, youth, and families. That's the CANS. It's a communication strategy. CANS is different from other kinds of measures that you might be familiar with. Number one, It's an item level tool. It's designed at the item level. Each individual items have meaning in terms of your treatment plan, service plan, care plan, individual education plan, whatever you call your plan. The individual items of the cans are designed to inform that plan. The only reason you have an item on the cans is because it might influence what happens next. Remember, the only reason you have an assessment process is to figure out what are you going to do to be helpful. You only need information that you're going to use to help. So that's how the cans is designed. The levels of the items are designed to translate immediately into action levels. So many psychometric measures are arbitrary. You don't really know the difference between a 50 and a 60. You know it's 10 points, but what does that mean? The cans is not arbitrary. Every single number has immediate meaning. Because remember, it's designed from a communication perspective, and clarity of meaning is one of the primary tenets of effective communication. So it's called the CANS, right? The child and adolescent needs and strengths. So in this model, needs and strengths are considered to be different from each other. Some measures treat strengths and deficits at opposite ends of the same continuum. Our experience is that's a mistake, because there are some strengths whose absence aren't needs, and there are some needs whose absence aren't strengths. So for the needs, the meanings are as follows. A 0 means no evidence, no need for action. Notice how I said it like a lawyer. No evidence. That means you have no reason to believe it's a need. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's not a need. You do your best faith assessment. If you come up empty, you say no evidence and you move on. But you're not pretending to divine the truth. You're just describing what you know at any given time. A 1 is watchful waiting prevention. So what's that? Keeping an eye on it. Why might you choose to keep an eye on something? One reason you might have a 1 is an emerging need or suspicion, and you need to prevent it from getting worse. Second reason for a 1 would be history. So what do we know about suicide? We know a significant history of suicidal behavior is a risk factor for future behavior. The third reason why you might have a 1 would be contention. So, have you ever been in a situation where there's a disagreement among people about the presence or an absence of a need? Well, what do? Well, you mark it, you tell people how, what needs to happen to resolve this difference of perspective, and you watch it moving forward. That's watchful waiting prevention. A 2 is an action level. That means the need has risen to the point where it's interfering in some notable way with the child, the family, the community's function. You have to do something about it. They're so depressed, their social relations are impaired. They're acting up in school, and the teacher's calling home and is frustrated. So you have to do something about it. And a 3 is immediate or intensive action. It's either dangerous or it's disabling. So let's say they're not going to school at all. Well, you're not going to learn if you don't go to school, right? So not going to school disables your education. So that's a 3 on school attendance, right? You're not going to school, and it prevents you from being able to become educated, right? So that's a 3. So you see how the needs lay out. 0 you're not worried about. 1 you're keeping an eye on, or you're doing prevention activities. 2s and 3s need to be in the plan. They need to be in the plan. Here's another way you can use this as a tool. So, as you probably know, families sometimes don't like assessments, right? And why don't they like assessments? Youth and families, parents frequently say, we don't like assessments. Why? Well, because they get them over and over and over again, and they don't know what they mean. Well, everybody can know what the CANS means, everybody. And so one of the ways you use this as a tool is to give this to parents and to youth, and it becomes their system navigation tool. They will know that they need to work on their 2s and 3s. This makes the planning process transparent. So 2s and 3s need to be addressed in the treatment plan, care plan, action plan, individual education plan. The strengths are set up in the same way, right? This is a communication strategy. One of the principles of communication is you want things simple to interpret. So 0s are always better than 3s. But strengths are rather different than needs, and you use them differently. So here are the action levels with strengths, and now you have to reverse yourself. So a 0 is a centerpiece strength. You can make it the focus of a strength-based plan. Let's say you remove kids from their parents because of abuse and neglect, but they have grandparents who have a loving home, and you can take those kids and put them with the grandparents. The grandparents will step up and raise those children. That's a centerpiece family strength. Kinship care, relative foster care is a centerpiece family strength. A 1 is a strength you can use, but maybe not as a centerpiece. So previously I helped manage a bunch of statewide systems in Illinois, and one of them was residential treatment. We had a young lady, she was a knitter, and knitting is a resiliency skill, right? Busy hands are a calmer mind. So, but then she got put into residential treatment, and you know how residential treatment staff can be. They're sort of like the security at the airport, right? Everything might be a weapon, so we couldn't let her knit. So here's one of those tensions in the system, the tension between the safety of the milieu and her access to her resiliency skill. We had to make a plan so that you, while still respecting the safety of the milieu, you create access for her resiliency skill, right? That's a 1. It's a useful strength. It's not a 0. You're not putting her in a sweatshop and having her crank out sweaters, right? I mean, it's a useful part of the plan, but it's not really the central part of the plan. So that's a 1. It's useful, but not a centerpiece. A 2 is you've identified it and you need to build it if it's going to become useful. So you know they like music, that's cool, they like music, but that's not a strength. But it gives you a window where you might develop a strength. So if you can identify any family members, well, you know who you need to work with if you're going to create family strengths. You may have to create positive relationships, but you know who you're working with because you've been able to define family members who currently exist, right? And then a 3 is no strength has been identified. So a 3 for a strength is a lot like a 0 for a need. Doesn't mean it's not there. It means nobody knows about it at this point. So if you don't have any idea of their talents and interests, that's a 3. If you don't have any idea about their spiritual, religious beliefs or practices, that's a 3. So what that means is 0s and 1s are used for strength-based planning, and 2s and 3s are used for strength building.
The CANS DT, or Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths Day Treatment Program, was developed and put to use in 2009 at the McHugh Education Center for CHEO's Steps to Success program. The program was designed to focus specifically on the unique needs and strengths of children and adolescents attending day treatment programs. Using a collaborative problem-solving approach as both a prospective and retrospective tool, the CANS DT has 5 domains. Number 1, behavioral needs. This is where the collaborative problem-solving pathways inventory and thinking skills inventory are incorporated. Number 2, mental health needs. Number 3, educational needs. Number 4, individual strengths. And number 5, parents and family needs and strengths.